Now, Ask Dr. Love with psychotherapist, author, love and relationship expert Dr. Jamie Turndorf. For expert advice on love and relationships, you can submit your questions online at AskDrLove.com or post comments and questions to Dr. Love while you're watching live over Google Hangouts or YouTube. Now, here's Dr. Love.
Welcome to Ask Dr. Love. I'm Dr. Jamie Turndorf, and it is my pleasure to be with you today for Perfect Passion After 50. So let me ask you, have you noticed if your sex life is dwindling as you age? Well, I don't want you to despair, because today we're going to be talking with Dr. Laurie Betito. She's the author of The Sex Bible for People Over 50. She's a clinical psychologist with a specialty in sex therapy, and she's been practicing as a psychotherapist for the past 26 years. She's also the president of the Sexual Health Network of Quebec, formerly Planned Parenthood, and the past president of the Canadian Sex Research Forum. And for the past 24 years, she's been dispensing sex and relationship advice over radio and TV, and she's also a regular contributor to various magazines and newspapers and TV shows. And you can also hear her nightly in Montreal on CJAD 800. And her show Passion has been on the air for 15 years, and it has always been number one in its time slot. So welcome, Dr. Laurie. You're with me?
Thank you. Boy, do you say Montreal very sexily.
Well, I can't, the thing is, I realized as I said it, because I heard my husband, who was French, say Montreal, so I couldn't help but go into the French way. And then I realized after I said it, nobody will know what I'm talking about. I have to say it the English way, Montreal. That's how we say it, right?
Montreal, as we say it.
Say Montreal, like Munchausen.
Exactly.
And then when I did your call letters, I started to say the J like they do in French, CG, and it's CJ.
It's an English radio, in fact.
Yes, I just slipped. I just completely slipped. So I'm so excited to talk with you because I know we're going to have an uplifting show, and I do mean this literally. How to keep flags flying at full mast, right?
Uh-huh.
All righty. So talk to me. Why did you write this book for people over 50?
Well, I had a couple of reasons. One reason was rather selfish, turning 50 and having a partner who was over 50. So I decided, you know what? It's time for me to start looking at sexuality later on in life. And I started to be asked to give a lot of talks in Montreal and elsewhere on aging and sexuality. So what I found was that there was a lot of information lacking. Like, people need this information. And when I think of my listener base, who are on average about 45 years old, and many of whom are much older, they drink it all in because there's a thirst for that knowledge that they don't know where to get it from. They're not exposed like the younger people are, and not that they don't have the internet and such, but there was a missing piece for me and for many people. At least I found that from my clinical practice, that people needed that sex education for older adults.
That is so true. And, the thing is, probably a lot of people in this age bracket are a little less comfortable getting their advice on the internet because you and I both, we grew up before the internet.
That's right. That's right. And they don't trust it, and they don't know, are they getting porn sites? Are they going to get, so they don't know who to ask the question to. Often these are things they don't know quite how to put the question. And, of course, the one thing I hear most often is people coming in saying, look, I'm feeling this way or that way. Is that normal? When I start to hear, I get that all the time. Is that normal? Am I normal, right?
Exactly. So, no, you're crazy. You're just crazy. You're not, no.
So I really wanted a book that would say to people, listen, there's a variety of ways of being sexual, and you have to expect changes as you get older. And just because you're not the same that you were when you were 20 or 30, just because your erections aren't as hard, just because, whatever, it doesn't mean you're not normal. It's part of the process, and we have to adapt to that process rather than lament the loss of something. It is a difference. It isn't a loss, but a difference.
Yeah, and what you're saying, so many women say that their male lovers, if they're in heterosexual relationships, their male lovers have actually become better lovers as they've aged because they take longer to get an erection, longer to ejaculate. They're not so quick, on the draw,
That's right, and they're more willing. They're more willing to take the time to pleasure you, and they know your body better as well. But it's not just them, right? You're also, as you get older, as women get older, we get more comfortable in our skin. We may not like our body so much, but we still feel better in our skin overall and are able to ask for what we want.
We hope so, right?
Well, we try to be. That's the aim, right? That's the goal.
When you said comfortable in our skin, I immediately riffed out on foreskin, and then I went off on this. I'm crazy, Laurie. I went off on this association where after my husband died, everybody says to me, Jamie, you've got to do internet dating. You live on a dirt road. Where are you going to meet anybody? So I did a brief stint, with internet dating, and I was talking on the phone one time with this guy, and he starts to get drunk, and he says to me, I have a feeling you have a wild side. This is what he tells me. And he says he wants to meet me midway. He lives somewhere, I guess, 4 hours away. And he wants to meet me halfway because I need to have some... No, I back up. I have to say, the first thing the guy said to me was, I saw your picture and I thought, I could F you. This is literally what he said to me.
Really nice.
Right, charming. I'm thinking, my hero, Mr. Romance, He's just like my romantic French husband, right? So, and then he says to me, I want you to meet me halfway because you need to have some skin in the game. And this is where my brain went, where I said, I think you mean you want some foreskin in the game. This is where my brain went.
No, thank you.
Horrible. So that was a crazy association, but now I'm coming back now to what we were talking about knowing your body as you get older. Right? And I even read, I'm sure you saw the same research, right, that women who come out of marriages, maybe in their 40s or 50s, end up being more orgasmic. People would think, oh, how's that possible? That they're much freer,
Well,
and
that's
relaxed.
the myth. That's one of those myths, Jamie, that women, as we get older, our orgasms are less intense, when in fact the opposite is often true. They're better. They're more intense as we get older, again, because you know your body more and you're freer with yourself. So you're out of your head and into your body a little bit more.
And then also, too, the women that they surveyed were just so glad to be out of a relationship that wasn't working. And so they were even comfortable in having more casual sexual encounters, and they felt free, unfettered, and this was much easier for them to have pleasure. Yeah.
That's it. You're absolutely right. I hear it described a lot like, oh, I felt like I was back in high school again.
Damn. Right?
Which is great, which is why it's so important when we think about sexual desire. These same women in those marriages that ended probably felt that their desire had up and left forever. And then they divorce, they start to get involved in new relationships, and they realize, it was never gone. It just needed to be woken up by the right context. And that's the reality, is that women in long-term relationships lose that. They lose that horniness, They lose that spontaneous desire for sex with somebody for eons. But if you were to put them with a new partner, that comes back. Now, I'm not saying that's the solution, but it just goes to show that it's dormant and not dead.
Yeah, and the thing is, this is where, my whole thing with resolve your conflicts, because you have unresolved conflicts, that's the number one killer of your love and your passion. It's a major later, as you know.
Well,
if you're feeling as dry as the Sahara Desert, well, let's get you connecting. Let's have you feel understood and heard and getting along. And boy, doesn't the juices flow? Doesn't the drive increase?
Right, and it isn't even the drive so much in terms of biology, because the drive to me is a biological drive, which women tend to lose along the way. Men hang on to that for longer, but the women lose that. But what we need to focus on is a woman's motivation for sex. So you have to look at the context.
That's what I'm calling drive. Because if you don't feel connected, you don't have a drive to have sex.
Right.
You know,
You're
you
not
have no
motivated to do it.
Yeah, motivated. We're using a different word for the same thing.
Right.
Because that is so true that if you don't feel connected and you don't feel safe, the first thing that goes off is your desire.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how stress and resentment and like all these things they do affect women, generally speaking, differently. You know, women are much more detailed focused, they're more in their heads, and men are much better, and we can learn something from them, is that they're much better at separating what goes on in their body and what goes on in their brain.
Yeah, that compartmentalizing is it serves them really well.
Yes,
you know, like the classic joke I tell in Kiss Your Fights Goodbye, where the two guys are asking each other, have you ever been too sick to have sex? And the one guy says to his other male friend, well, yeah, once I was too sick. And the other guy says to him, man, I could have 106-degree fever and I wouldn't be too sick for sex. And his friend responds, I said sick, you know.
Well, that's it. That's exactly it. Whereas a woman, you know, makes her sick to think that her kitchen is upside down, you know.
Really? You don't take the garbage out? No, you're not getting below the belt here, no.
Well, you know, and it makes us seem so complex, and guys are like scratching their heads, you know, like why? It's so unfair. It's so unfair, but it's not a question of fairness. It is what it is.
We're so different. You know, the procreative imperative, the poor guys, they have 400 million sperm saying, come on, I don't care if we're not getting along. I got to spread my seed. I got to continue the species here.
That's right. Exactly.
And the women are thinking, I don't want to get knocked up with a guy who isn't going to stick around, you know, and it doesn't feel safe. And, you know, women will say, but I'm past menopause. You can't knock me up anymore. But our psychological, biological programming doesn't care about that.
That's right. That's right.
You know, it's so crazy. So, you know, so the book really came out of your, if I may say, it came out of your own wish to really have the second half of your life be sexy and great.
Absolutely. And it's just, and also I'm surrounded by other 50-year-olds, right? So my everyday life in terms of my friendship circle, and, you know, I have a large web of friends, and they're all in their 50s. So these are all the things we talk about. So really, I wrote it for them. I wrote it for us. I wrote it for my clients who also struggle with a lot of these questions. So and my listeners who also, you know, I get thousands upon thousands of emails, and so I see what the patterns are, and so much to do with aging, aging.
Mm-hmm.
And aging begins also, young.
I wanted to also talk a little bit about some of the things that kill our sex drive, because, you know, we're going to take a little break. You know, my second segment I call Dr. Love's Quickie segment. You can guess why. It's
I love
short.
it.
How fitting for our topic. But then when we come back, I always do some tweets on the topic just to sort of drive home the points that we're talking about. Okay. I'll do a few tweets, but I also wanted to talk a little bit about some of the misconceptions, because I was going to do like the top 5 misconceptions that people have about sex over 50, which you could just ditch these misconceptions. It would help a lot. And then some of the things that people don't realize that kill the sex drive, even though they're unrelated to age, so that people will actually think, oh, it's because I'm older, when in fact it's not because you're older, it's something else that's causing it. So I wanted to get into that, and maybe we can slip all that in during the Quickie segment. I don't know. It depends. If we can't be quick enough, we'll just let it run over to the next segment.
Sure. My pleasure.
All righty. We'll take a brief break, and I'll be back with you in a moment on Ask Dr. Love Radio.
Dr. Love's Quickies.
Wondering how to tell the difference between love and lust? Poor Mark. Every time he takes a woman to bed, he ends up scratching his head. His big head, I mean. How can he tell if he's in love or only in lust? Time. Lust usually fades in a few weeks while true love lasts. So when it comes to gauging if you're in love or only in lust, remember, you can't trust lust. I'm Dr. Jamie Turndorf of AskDrLove.com.
You are listening to Ask Dr. Love with Dr. Jamie Turndorf. Ask Dr. Love is the web's premier relationship advice site since 1996. Visit AskDrLove.com to search thousands of free relationship advice articles on any relationship issue you may have, or submit a question to her free advice column. You can also watch this broadcast live over Google Hangouts or YouTube. Sign up for her newsletter at AskDrLove.com to be the first to know about her upcoming radio shows. And find out how you can watch her live and ask her questions in real time. Don't be shy. Dr. Turndorf wants to help you, so take advantage of this unique opportunity to get a personal answer from one of today's most respected experts. This show is for you, the listeners, so if you have a question for her, make sure to watch live on Tuesdays from 1 to 2 Eastern Time on Google Hangouts or YouTube, or catch the archived broadcast on webtalkradio.net. Now, back to Dr. Love.
Welcome back to Ask Dr. Love Radio. I'm Dr. Jamie Turndorf. I'm talking about perfect passion after 50 with my guest, Dr. Laurie Betito, author of the Sex Bible for People Over 50, and this is Dr. Love's Quickie segment. So, Laurie, I was saying to you before we took the break that I was interested in debunking some of the myths that people have about sex over 50. So, do you want to lay a few on us now?
I shall. The first one is that sexually women peak in their 30s. We always say that women achieve their peak when in fact both men and women really peak at the same age, which is 18. When we talk about a peak, we're talking about a testosterone or a hormone peak, but that changes after, where all levels drop for both men and women. They just happen to drop faster for women, but that doesn't mean that women can't have the best sex of their lives later on. So when we hear that women peak later, actually we often hear in their 40s and in their 50s that they peak, because it's only in later life that they, like we said before, they know their bodies more, they're enjoying themselves more, they're not worried about getting pregnant, and all the studies, like many studies and surveys have actually shown that. So it's out there. But yet we think, that it's only in their 30s, when in fact it's probably closer to their 50s that women. Another one is that the orgasms you have when you're young are better, are more intense. So meaning that sex is probably more satisfying when you're young. And again, that's not true. Many studies are showing that women are more orgasmic as they age and are more likely to have even their first orgasms later, for the very first time, much later. So again, mature women have a better understanding of what makes them tick, right? And they're much less afraid of asking for what they want, which means that if they can ask for what they want, to be touched in the way that they want, then they can be stimulated to have that orgasm much better, much faster than if they said nothing and didn't show. Another myth is that erection problems are inevitable, which is untrue, because, first of all men experience some erectile dysfunction at some point in their lives, and only about a quarter of those men later in life experience erectile dysfunction severe enough to require medication, whereas we think, all men after a certain age need Viagra, for example, which isn't true. Another myth is that we lose interest in sex as we get older, and we talked about desire. We may lose some of the spontaneous desire for sex, or that feeling of I need. It's no longer a need, but you're still very motivated for sex. You still have, your interest is there. Your spontaneous desire may not be there, but your interest in sex is absolutely there. It is alive and well and usually stays there. So that's certainly one of the big myths. And another one is that the quality of sex declines as we age. And again, studies have shown that the quality actually improves. It's that quality over quantity thing. So all the studies that I looked at really showed that it doesn't decline with age, that the quality, people can actually be much more satisfied with their sex lives as they age.
That's nice. Very, very reassuring.
Yeah.
But I have a couple more that, when we come back, I'll say a couple more that I was thinking of, see what you think of them.
Sure.
And I love that, because we didn't prepare what we were going to talk about. We just kind of went on the sperm of the moment.
Yes, the sperm of the moment.
Remember Archie Bunker used to say that? What a kick in the groin and on the sperm of the moment, right? So, yeah, I'll lay a few on you when we come back. But let me just give you a couple tweets before we take a break. And here's one that confirms what you're saying. Sex over 50 can still be nifty. And our sexual thermometer is actually a health barometer.
Uh-huh.
So I want to talk about that, too, because a lot of times when you think, oh, I'm just old, no, it's a sign something's not working right health-wise. And I want to talk about that more when we come back. And for many women, what's in your pants is less important than the romance.
Very true.
So let's just take a brief break, and I'm going to be back with you in a moment on Ask Dr. Love Radio.
You are listening to Ask Dr. Love with Dr. Jamie Turndorf. If you yearn to get along better with your life partner or spouse, friends, family members, and even coworkers, Dr. Love's latest Hay House book, Kiss Your Fights Goodbye, Dr. Love's 10 simple steps to cooling conflict and rekindling your relationship, shows you how to turn conflict into connection for a lifetime of lasting love. Find out more about this book and even read a free excerpt by visiting AskDrLove.com. This is Ask Dr. Love with Dr. Jamie Turndorf. And if you have a question for her, make sure to watch live over Google Hangouts or YouTube, where you can submit your comments or questions and connect with Dr. Love in real time. Or listen to the archived show at webtalkradio.net. This show is for you, the listeners, and Dr. Love wants to hear from you. You're listening to Ask Dr. Love with Dr. Jamie Turndorf. Once again, here's Dr. Love.
Welcome back to Ask Dr. Love Radio. I'm Dr. Jamie Turndorf, talking with Dr. Laurie Betito about perfect passion after 50. And before we took the break, I wanted to talk about some of the other myths. And here were a couple that I was thinking of. What do you think about this one? Mm-hmm. This one, I think, comes from, often women think this one. If you're having sex with someone, it must be a serious relationship.
Right.
Yeah. And especially, because of the generation that we came from, lots of times, the women thought, we weren't having sex unless it was love and marriage and babies, and can't
that's changing. That. Yeah, that's changing as we're seeing so many more baby boomers involved in the online dating and even Tinder and things like that. So yeah. I think that's changing a bit, right?
And I even see it with young women. They think, I'm going to use my my sexuality as a hook, to hook the person in. And if we're having sex, he must love me. And you'll see people making that mistake, young and old.
Well, part of the problem, too, is that when women have sex, they, that oxytocin is released, right? So the bonding hormone. So they feel much more bonded than the guys do. We have much more of that hormone. So they can misinterpret that or get hurt more easily because they get more attached once they have sex.
Very, very true. And it's so true, the oxytocin or what they call the cuddle hormone. Mm-hmm. So that's why it's so much better for women because, you can't fight your biology and you do bond. It's best to be more comfortable about the relationship, and be clear that you're both on the same page before you jump into the sack, because you can get hurt.
Right.
So unless you're both on the same page and you just want to have friends with benefits,
and even that has a risk because
you're still going to get attached.
Yeah, exactly.
You will get attached, and it's just natural. People say, men don't get attached, but even when you read the studies, men who go to prostitutes, they get attached too. It's a naturally bonding experience. So.
And you know what? Older men tend to want more bonding. That's what I've noticed, is that the older guys want the intimacy and not so much the sex. I mean, they want the sex, but that's less important.
Right? As the testosterone diminishes, they become much more like the way we've always wanted them to be, more about intimacy. Yes.
That's exactly.
Here's another one I always like to think about. A lot of times people think, I'm too old to worry about STDs.
Oh, no, you're not.
That's a biggie, right?
Oh, I have to tell you that I do talks in in residences, seniors residence, where the average age is like 82, and I always go there with a big bowl of condoms, and my condom demonstrator and my slides, and I show them how to put it on. And why is that? Because the statistics are showing that the greatest increase in STIs is in the elderly population. And in talking with them, I started to see, first of all, women far outnumber the men in these seniors' residences. So what you have is you have 2 or 3 guys going from room to room. Like they have multiple partners.
The guy's wet dream. He's now like servicing this harem of women.
At 85 years old.
Like, damn,
he's in heaven.
It's like, oh my God. And I'm giving them all herpes,
Yeah,
oh
great.
My God.
I'm telling people now, it's like if you really want to get a lot of action when you're older, move into a senior's residence.
Damn, I'll take that under advisement, right? Get the internet dating, right?
It's fun.
Try it.
But you're absolutely right. And that's a generation, truly a generation that did not use condoms or use condoms only prior to marriage, right?
That's right.
They didn't even call them condoms. They were French letters, or I don't know what else they were calling them.
Oh, the French ticklers? Was that what that was? No.
The French, the French letter in the war. That's what they were calling them.
Yeah.
And they were only using them for when they knew they were having sex with prostitutes, and it had to do with pregnancy too, right? Pregnancy prevention. So they're not worried about getting their 85-year-old lover pregnant.
Exactly. So, keep it in your pants if you're not going to use condoms. But this is a whole nother touchy subject is, people don't even know about the dental dams. It's like you can get STDs by doing oral sex on a woman, right? Yeah. Without using a dental dam. So, but how many people are willing to buy a dental dam or cut a condom open and make it into a dental dam and go down on someone, through the latex?
Right. Well, try convincing a woman to give a guy oral sex with a condom, or try convincing the guy that he should wear the condom during oral sex.
Oh, it ain't happening.
It's not happening enough, but it should, but it isn't.
Yeah. Oh, I know. And then the worst thing is, I went to give a talk, and the person who was speaking before me was a gynecologist, and she was talking about STDs. And when she got to the part about pharyngeal herpes, where you give oral sex to a guy or, a woman, and you get it down your throat, and then you end up in the hospital because you're, riddled. I said, that's it, man. I got to turn into Mother Teresa. I heard that one.
I know, it's scary. Well, they have never sseen as much throat cancer as they're seeing now. Just through HPV infections and the chlamydia and gonorrhea and these viruses also live in the back of your throat, and they can cause some serious damage.
Mm-hmm. And that's what I think happened to Michael Douglas.
That's what he said anyway. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, who the hell knows? I wasn't there. I didn't do a culture after he went down.
That's right. It wasn't my vagina, so.
I'm pleading the fifth. No.
Exactly.
So, and here's a good one. Many people over 50 think they already know what they like sexually and that they should just stick to the routine, but then they actually, with this stick-in-the-mud attitude, stick it to themselves in the sex department because their bodies are changing,
Yes, and
always
they have
changing.
to adapt. They really need to adapt. When you think about some of the changes that happen, for example, a man, to get the same erection he once had, you need a lot more time and a lot more direct stimulation in order to get there. So doing the same old and getting upset that it's not getting there, you have to change the way you do things. Women too need more direct stimulation. So you have to alter your positions to get that, or you have to use toys, or you have to start introducing new things so that your body continues to respond.
You know where macho women buy their vibrators?
Where?
Black & Decker.
I like that one.
But, the thing is, so now we're going to that topic I wanted to speak about before during the quickie segment, the health question. Because a lot of people think, oh, well, I'm not getting erections. Well, it's just because I'm aging. But ultimately, your penis is a barometer of how well the blood is circulating, right?
That's right. Well, in fact, there was an interesting study that looked at people who had erectile dysfunction. It was a longitudinal study, and they found that erectile dysfunction was a precursor of 10 years for heart disease. So
Yep.
even 10 years earlier, that would mean that if you had erectile dysfunction and you didn't check on it, the chances of you having heart disease later on were very high. So obviously, whenever I see a client with erectile dysfunction anywhere close to the age of 50, anywhere really after 40, I always say, please, you need to check your blood pressure, you need to check your heart, because if the blood isn't flowing to your penis, it may be not flowing to other vital organs.
It is. It's got to be, because, this, why would it only discriminate against your penis and say, we're going to clog only to this main artery? No,
That's right.
So, it's a barometer. Your penis is your sexual thermometer. That's really your health barometer, right? So you want to be realizing that. And then, so that really bothers me when I see people just going for drugs to treat the symptom, or Viagra or Cialis, and you're just treating a symptom, and it's like a raging forest fire is going on. You've got clogging of the arteries and so on. And
and then you're ignoring it. You ignore it, and then eventually something happens, and you had the warning. The warning signal was there, and you ignored it.
Your penis was the wake-up call, your lack of blood flow, and so on.
Yeah.
So, and then, of course, people don't realize also, well, here we go again. I mean, this is just my pet peeve about using drugs to suppress symptoms instead of getting at the underlying problem, like even blood pressure medications. Alternative MDs will tell you all the time that blood pressure is a symptom. It's in itself not a problem. It is a symptom of other underlying health problems or kidney toxicity and so on and so on. But the blood pressure meds themselves cause a lot of sexual dysfunction and erectile dysfunction, right?
Well, that's the catch-22. Unfortunately, if you lead an unhealthy lifestyle, you're going to develop a lot of things like potential, diabetes and high blood pressure and all the drugs that are given to moderate that, or to make that more not to cure it but to control it, have an effect on your sexual functioning, whether it's arousal or excitement or orgasm or what have you. So it has an impact. So this is why maintaining a healthy lifestyle is obviously so important.
Yeah, and even I'm sure you see that birth control pills themselves can affect a woman's drive. Sometimes messing with hormones in this way makes her lose desire.
Well, there's certainly a link between sexual desire and birth control pill. Again, not all pills, and not all women will have that impact. Only about anywhere 5-10% of women will experience that. But again, you have to decide which one is good for you and which dose is good for you. And you know that there are at least 200 commonly prescribed medications that have a sexual side effect, but your doctor will never tell you about them.
It's so true.
Yeah.
It is so true. And then people don't think also about just the effect of stress. Besides, we spoke before about unresolved relationship conflict. Terrible. Stress, money worries, these things produce the chemicals that are incompatible with sexual arousal.
Especially for women. Not that stress doesn't affect men, because many men do cannot function sexually because of stress. But then you have, on the other side, you have men who use sex to release the stress. Right? They find that it's a relief from the stress. But generally speaking, stress can kill you, every part of you. It's not just your erections or your drive or anything, but we know that stress is related to a myriad of illnesses.
It's just everything. It shortens your lifespan, Well, specifically, unresolved relationship conflict definitely shortens the lifespan.
Well, that's the biggest stressor. That happens to be the biggest stressor, because that is the biggest chunk of our lives, is the relationships that we're in. And if that's stressful, very conflictual, very chaotic, then you are making yourself sick.
And, it's so funny, because that's what Kiss Your Fights Goodbye is all about. My method for resolving relationship conflict is just right there. But so often people are so married to their discord and their fighting that it becomes such a way of life, not realizing that it's really shortening your life and affecting every aspect of your life, including your sexuality.
And sometimes I see that in my office, and I don't know, I'm sure you get that same feeling, as you want to shake somebody and say, you got to get out, this is killing you. Look what you're doing to yourself.
Yeah.
And it's
the thing is, getting divorced doesn't fix it because you take your same dysfunctional strategies to your next relationship.
Well, you have to fix yourself.
Fix your deal, fix how you're dealing with your stuff,
That's right. And then you see, exactly, it's not a question of removing the partner in order to fix. You fix yourself in this relationship and then see what happens. Sometimes by fixing yourself, the entire relationship gets fixed, but other times it falls apart. Nonetheless, you still have to fix yourself.
You might as well do it because there's nowhere to go but up. And then you see, because so often, you're a pebble in the pond, you change, the whole surface of the pond changes, and the other person very often just automatically changes in response to you being different. And as you say, if the person doesn't, well, then you're at least bringing a new version of you to your next relationship.
That's right. I like that. I love that, the new version of you. I just had a patient say that. I don't want, saying, I don't want to be that version of who I was 4 years ago. I'm going to stick with this new version. And if my husband can't take it.
Word. Isn't that funny?
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting, huh?
Yeah.
It's sort of the collective unconscious.
It really is.
Yeah. And of course, another one people don't even think about, right, is just the sleep deprivation. How that
that's a big one.
Kills your sex drive. People don't think of it. Dead from the neck down, right?
Well, you think about how many people in our society suffer from sleep apnea.
Oh, yeah.
And, that's a huge, people don't realize it, but also we live in a society of a lot of, I don't know how many of us are overweight, but plenty enough. And that affects our sleep because that affects our apnea. You're more likely to apnea if you are overweight. And many other things that we do with ourselves, like smoke and all the other bad habits that we have, that affect our sleep ultimately. And we don't realize that not having a good night's sleep regularly just, doesn't just make us cranky, and it affects us physically.
Mm-hmm. So. Absolutely makes you a not happy camper.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, it's really fun talking to you.
You too. I'm loving this.
Yeah, we're having a good time. If you were a boy, I'd date you.
I love it. The two radio people talking to each other. It's really fun.
I know. All right, let me just take a brief break, and I'll be back with you in a moment on Ask Dr. Love Radio.
Dr. Love's Quickies.
Mary's about ready to give Love the shove, 'cause no matter what she tries, guys don't know that she's alive. To turn guys on, she needs to turn on those green lights, nonverbal cues that say, over here. Most guys won't approach unless they're cleared for landing. So ladies, to kickstart your love life, turn on those green lights and flash your pearly whites. I'm Dr. Jamie Turndorf of Ask Dr. Love.
You are listening to Ask Dr. Love with Dr. Jamie Turndorf. To submit your questions to Dr. Turndorf live on the air, sign up for her free newsletter at AskDrLove.com and get the details on how you can connect with her on Google Hangouts or YouTube during her live broadcasts, or listen to the archived show at webtalkradio.net. If you've recently been through a breakup and are looking for a second chance, wondering how you can reconcile with your ex, or if it's even possible after all you've been through, Dr. Love's book, Make Up, Don't Break Up, presents her proven 5-step plan for reconciling with your ex. This plan was developed over years of research, working with thousands of couples at her Center for Emotional Communication. This is a proven, no-hype, no-nonsense method that gets right to the root of the problem and shows you how to reignite the spark and rekindle your love. For more about Make Up, Don't Break Up, visit AskDrLove.com. And now, back to Dr. Love.
Get it on, 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 yeah.
You're listening to Ask Dr. Love Radio with Dr. Jamie Turndorf. I'm talking about perfect passion after 50 with Dr. Laurie Betito. So let's talk a little bit about why it's so important to maintain your sexuality into old age.
Well, health-wise, it's so important. I always use the use it or lose it kind of thing. You want to get the blood flowing, right? So keeping active gets the blood flowing, and we know that when you keep the blood flowing, your vagina will produce more estrogen. Your penis will get a workout. Those veins will get a workout, so the arteries will work a little bit better. That helps. Of course, there's so many reasons why we should continue to have sex. All the studies point to benefits. There's only benefits to it. You live longer. You look 7 years younger if you maintain an active sex life. It reduces stress. It makes you happier. People who have regular sex lives are happier. It provides a great workout. I mean, okay, it's not like going to the gym necessarily, but it gives you some cardiovascular workout. So there's so many health benefits to it.
Yeah. Where do you sign? It sounds good, right?
Well, that's the thing. It is good. It is good for you. I just, it's unfortunate that we talked a lot about the resentments and the relationship issues. Those really get in the way of maintaining this healthy sexuality, which is so good for us. And then we end up kind of feeling like it's a chore or obligation or guilt or shame and all these negative associations to sex. And that's the sad part.
Really?
We have to kind of do away with all that. Yeah.
Yeah. So what about people who have health issues? Oh, by the way, we should say, because people sometimes think, only sex with a partner counts, but no, masturbation will also do the same. It's still going to get the blood flowing and all of that, right?
Right, and now, and there's lots of things available to help you in that department now.
Like toys. We're talking about, like the Black & Decker, macho women.
Lots of toys for women.
Yeah. Now, what do you tell people to do if they have health issues that are preventing them from having sex?
Well, first of all, let's define sex, right? When you're saying sex, you're talking intercourse right now. When my book describes sex, and like we talk about many, many different aspects of sexuality. You don't need to have intercourse in order to have healthy sex. I know plenty of couples who do not have intercourse but have very active sex lives, right?
Yep.
So there are many ways to have sex, and this is what couples could explore. So a lot of all the touch, anything to do with touch and sensuality, and it doesn't always have to be genitally focused. It doesn't always have to lead to an orgasm. As we get older, the need for orgasm becomes less and less, and I hear that from men as well as women. Orgasms, of course, are wonderful and they're nice, but they're not an absolute necessity. And
because sometimes they're harder to come by.
Absolutely. Or you can still feel great. And it's not even that they're harder to come. I mean, yes, they are as you get older, but you're still having a satisfactory encounter. Just because you don't have the orgasm doesn't mean it's not satisfying to you.
A lot of guys don't even realize that they can actually have an orgasm without an erection.
That's right. I talk about that too. I talk about that.
And they can even have intercourse without an erection.
It has to be, at least solid enough to get in there, but
I had heard, some time ago about a technique called stuffing. You familiar with that one?
I've heard it too, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, again, you can stuff it in and keep it there, and that can feel good too, and you have to be willing to explore. Don't give up. I've seen too many people say, oh, well, my penis isn't working, I'm just going to give it up, and forget about it. And that I find sad, because they're giving up not just the intercourse, they give up everything else related to intimacy.
I had a guy, Michael Russer, on the show. The show was called Intimacy Without Intercourse, and he had undergone prostate surgery, which rendered him impotent, and he's not an old guy. And he describes his journey back to total intimacy and sensuality and sexuality. And the woman that he is with, his life partner, he actually tried with her. He tried different techniques for inserting things in the urethra to try to get an erection and injections and all this stuff. And finally he just said, look, this is it. I cannot have intercourse. And he describes in great and beautiful detail how they have such amazing sex life with no intercourse. And when she began the relationship with him, was so dry, couldn't lubricate, and because they found such intimacy and physical connection, he said that you could bottle how lubricated she is now, and how many orgasms she has, and how many orgasms he has, and they have so much pleasure together.
Well, if you think back, think back when we were younger and doing other things besides intercourse. Remember when, back in those days, you weren't having intercourse right away. You were fooling around an awful lot. And that excitement of all that other stuff, You know,
Yep.
and if you ask couples who have been together for a long time, ask them how often they make out. It's shocking to hear that so many can't even remember the last time that they had an intimate, deep kiss. Even during sex. During intercourse, it doesn't happen. And that, to me, is another really sad thing. And so sometimes
intimate.
when I see couples, I will tell them, you're not even allowed to have intercourse. I'm taking that off the table. The next month, you are going to explore all the other ways that you can be sexual and all the other ways that your body can give you pleasure without sticking your penis into that vagina.
Yes. And, it's so funny. I had a couple, maybe 30 years ago, he was getting performance anxiety because, this happens a lot. You get one failed attempt, then you start to worry. Now you're producing the stress chemicals that prevent you from getting subsequent erections. Right. So it literally made himself impotent. So to take his penis off the table, I just said, you're not allowed to have sex at all. You're only allowed to just touch each other everywhere and kiss each other, but you are forbidden from having any kind of intercourse, right? So just from taking it off the table, so he wasn't worried about getting an erection. Of course, he gets an erection.
Of course.
So the two of them said, screw Jamie, for that.
We work the same way, Jamie, because I've had the same situation over and over again.
There they were yelling at me, screw her, and then they said, we're not, let's screw her. So funny.
Yeah, and they were cured all of a sudden, you see?
Yeah, right. So I know you suggest that people should stretch their boundaries. So tell everybody what you mean by that.
Well, stretching boundaries meaning, look, sometimes boredom does set in, right? You've been with somebody for many, many years, and, it's been the same way, the same thing. There's so many other things you can do, and you can stretch your boundaries by talking about things that you might want to try, things that you might have thought of trying, and and sometimes we're talking like light bondage, for example. What if I was blindfolded? What if I tied your hands up? Like getting a bit kinky, or do some of the fantasy and role playing kind of stuff, where let's pretend. I had one couple that did this, which was kind of fun. They would go out, and she would go off to a bar, and then he'd come in, and he'd pretend he'd see her across the room, and he didn't know her, and I think they got this from a movie somewhere. But anyway, and it really worked. Like they would play out this whole scenario and this whole seduction thing, and so you just want to kind of play with it a little. You can play with it in the bedroom. Using fantasy, getting a little bit kinky, using props. Using sex toys. Sex toys aren't just for masturbation. They can be used in the couple, too.
Yeah.
So,
but some guys get so defensive, like, oh, you need this, I'm not enough for you. So you have to always, I'm sure you tell them they have to talk about it first, make sure nobody's nose is getting out of joint, right?
Exactly. You've got to have that conversation. Obviously, you're not going to stretch boundaries without having open conversations about sex. That's ridiculous. Because you're not going to come into the bedroom one day and say, let me blindfold, gag you, and tie you up, and never have spoken about some of these things before.
That's the boundaries.
That's not good. Yeah, that's not how you do it. And then, then I talk also about other things that people can try that isn't for everybody, but I certainly know couples in their 50s who have gone that route, and that is to have open marriages. They experiment with the boundaries of sexual permission, if you will, right?
Yeah. I've always been very wary of that particular aspect because, I know Gwyneth and her partner got into, was it Gwyneth or who was it who got into the open marriage thing? Oh, it was Demi.
Was she?
Yes, and it got so messed up because so often what happens in these cases, it's like, well, now you're more turned on by this one than by me, and then the jealousies. And so it's a real slippery slope. I'm always wary of that,
Right. And in fact, in my book, I talk a lot about this, that if you're going to go that route, you better have some very clear, you better think very clearly about the factors that you need to consider because like you said, how will I feel if my partner seems to be enjoying his lover more than he enjoys me, for example? Or what if that new partner has more stamina than me? What if that new partner has a bigger penis than me? Is it going to affect me?
What a can of worms. Really.
Exactly. So
Exactly.
you are treading, you have to go there very, very carefully, and you have to have a lot of rules. So in the book, I actually give out a whole bunch of rules that you need to be there so that you don't, to minimize that risk, if you will.
Yeah, and then the thing is, too, you don't know how you're going to feel until you feel, and then you can't bolt the barn door after the horse has fled. So I'm always...
Once it's done, Jamie, you cannot turn back. Can I just tell you the story of one couple that I met? So he was after his wife to have a more open marriage, and for years and years he kept saying, come on, let's have a polyamorous relationship. Let's have an open relationship where you can have other partners, I can have other partners. And she was always very resistant to it until finally she says, okay, fine, this is what you want, fine, we'll do it. She is the first one to find another partner. He, of course, then he goes nuts. He freaked out. It was not good. And then she realized, hey, you know what? I kind of like this. I'm okay with this. Yeah, and now he can't turn back the clock.
No, you cannot. You can't unring that bell.
That's right.
Right. So often, a lot of times, actually I've talked a lot about this recently, all this, polyamory is the solution for monogamy, which doesn't work. Well, guess what?
No.
If you figure out how to work your conflicts out, monogamy works just fine.
Oh,
so, sidestepping the problems, well, I'll just go and open the relationship. Well, that doesn't solve it. You just take your problems into another relationship.
First of all, one thing for certain, if you're going to have an open relationship, you cannot have issues in your relationship. Only the relationships that are very solid, very open in terms of their communication can do this. If this is not an answer to a problematic relationship.
Exactly. Yeah. So how do people know when they need, because we only have 2 minutes, and I want to make sure people know how to find you. So, you and I could talk probably for 10 days.
Oh, yes.
So probably you just have to come back. That's what we're going to do.
Good.
And then we'll just talk more. So let's just make sure, because I want everybody to know how to find you. Say the name of your book again. Let's do that.
Sure. All right. So the book it's just out this week, in fact, in bookstores. The Sex Bible for People Over 50, The Complete Guide to Sexual Love for Mature Couples. It's a quiver book, and it's available everywhere, and it's in hardcover. I can be heard nightly on a radio station, and you can listen to it online as well, CJAD.com, and the show is called Passion, and it's on Eastern Time, 10 to 11 p.m. Monday to Friday, and my website is drlaurie.com. That's DRLAURIE.com.
Well, I have to say, this is our first meeting, but I have an immediate passion for you.
Likewise, Jamie, likewise. I can't wait to have you on my show.
Oh, yeah, so you'll email me after, and then we'll hook up, and we'll make that happen.
Oh, absolutely.
All righty? And I just glad you don't live closer, because I have a feeling you and I would be just hanging out all the time.
I'm going to come visit you. Now that I know you're not so far away, I'm going to come visit you.
Oh, how exciting. I'm thrilled. All righty. So I'm not going to say goodbye. I'll say we'll talk soon, and I'll see you all next week on Ask Dr. Love Radio.